Welcome to the Swissprener Show, a podcast about startup stories and hands-on learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. My name is Sylvan and I will be your host. Man, this place is packed and busy. Can we actually record a podcast here? That was the first thought coming through our heads when we entered the Kraftwerk Sellnau in Zurich, which went from being an electricity plant to a co-working and meeting space. Here, we will be meeting Nicolas Bürer, the CEO of DigitalSwitzerland, which is an association that aims to make Switzerland a leading digital innovation hub. Nicolas is a very busy man. He has to connect corporate CEOs and politicians, but also startups and SMEs. So it's no surprise that when we arrived, he was still busy on a phone call. But thankfully, that gave us more time to set everything up and check out the cool space we were in. It looked beautiful. It was absolutely huge, and there were ship containers stacked on top of each other that serve as meeting rooms, offices, and phone booths. I highly encourage you to Google Kraftwerk Sellnau and have a look at the spot yourself, or if you're around, just come by and have a coffee here. After a couple of minutes we had set up, Nicolas entered the room and the interview started right away. Before we get started with the episode, I would like to introduce you to SBB Startup. If you think that your company is a good fit for the Swiss Railways, get in touch with them or learn more about their startup programs at sbbstartup.com. Nicolas, a very warm welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's great to have you here today for the Q&A session about incubators and accelerators.
Thank you for inviting me. Looking forward.
We already start with this first question coming from Cedric Waldburger, and he asks, what's the difference between an accelerator and an incubator?
Good question from Cedric, by the way. A great serial entrepreneur, I have to mention it.
Absolutely.
I think an acceleration, as I can see it, is more short phase when you want to go in a new industry, in a new market for a short time, a couple of weeks, a month. It's from a typical an acceleration in a program with a beginning and with an end. Mm-hmm. An incubation is for me more something maybe before starting. You're looking for co-founders, you have an idea, you're coming from a corporate environment and you're looking for support more on the midterm. I will call it incubation. In my opinion, there is no universal definition as of today, but it's the way I see it.
I think that's a good approach, how to handle these definitions. And Danik asked, are they worth the commitment and distraction? Because if you sign up for such a program, there's usually also a trade-off that you make, like your time, your resources that you allocate to this program. So in general, the question, is it worth it?
For me, the answer is very clear, and it's a great question. It's like everything in life, and as a startupper, you have only two things. You might have money and you have your time. And that's the same for an accelerator, incubator. It's worth your engagement. So if you engage, like in everything you do, if you engage perfectly, if you really want to get something out of it, you will get something out of it. If you go a bit like as a tourist, you're unsure if it will bring you something, it's not worth doing it. So it's really important to get engaged yourself with clear objectives, what you want to reach out until the end of the program.
So this is a perfect gateway to the next question, also coming in over Instagram. When does it actually make sense to participate in such a program? Like, what would be good examples of having a clear goal or clear purpose when it actually makes sense to participate in such a program?
So I'll give you two examples. One might be a foreign company wanted to enter the Swiss market. Switzerland has the highest density of corporates worldwide, we should not forget. So for many European or even extra-European companies, if they want to reach out to corporates in the Swiss market, as you know it, B2B sales, it's horror. So one of the ways to accelerate is entering the market might be through an acceleration program. So for them, it makes sense if you want to enter a new market, in this example, Switzerland. Another example for a Swiss company, if I would like to go to Silicon Valley, for example, of course, I can ask my friends, some VC, Swiss VC. And another way to going to Silicon Valley is Incubator of Y Incubator or Plug and Play, as an example, is the biggest one, because you want to go to the most famous ones, of course. So for me, one concrete example is entering a new market. is a very good way of doing. It's an acceleration. It's this one. Another one might be entering a new industry, maybe within your market or in Europe, you have some specific accelerator. Also in Switzerland, F10 is one of them for fintech. Right. So if you have some ideas, you have a small team, a great team at the beginning, you might want to go in a fintech accelerator in this example. For me, they are the best cases, at least for the accelerators, is industry or new market.
Yeah, I think that's a very good strategic approach to the whole discussion. And Helena also asks, are there certain business types that have a higher success rate, basically, than others joining such a program?
I think you need to be, so business types, I believe you need to be very extremely open-minded. You need to want to be coached. If you're coaching resistant, just don't go in such a program. It's important. It's the same, by the way, with investors. If you don't want to be coached by angels or VC, like everything, it's not going to work. So it's really the first mindset. Be open-minded, want to be coached, want to learn something, and be ready to change completely your business plan, because there's always in a startup, you are wrong somewhere, and this is the aim you want to reach out. So really it is wanted to learn and wanted to improve. I think it's a very important mindset. If you're not there yet, don't go in such a program.
Is this also sort of linked to the stage that you're in? So does such a program make more sense for very early stage startups, or does it also make sense to participate in such a program if you're already a bit a later stage startup?
I think so, between very early stage and maybe Series A, until Series B, maybe it makes sense. Again, don't forget, if you want to go to Hong Kong, to Singapore, or Silicon Valley, you might be post-Series A or B, and it still makes sense to go there. Of course, for everything early stage, it makes sense. After Series C, you have reached 50 millions. You don't need them anymore. You have so many of VCs or family office, and they will accelerate you. So that's their role somewhere in investing in your company.
And also, just in general, you also give something, your time and your resources. So obviously the question from entrepreneurs also is, what do I actually get in return? So what do accelerators and incubators deliver to you as a startup?
I mean, really bad answer for me, I'm sorry, it depends on which program. Important is really you want to know what you want. Do you want access to corporates? Do you want access to investors? Do you want access to a new market? Do you just want to start and be successful and raise the first million? Are you looking for co-founders, maybe? Are you looking for a CTO? Are you looking for best practice with other startuppers because this is your first startup and you're a bit cautious, You really want to know what you're looking for. If you don't know, you don't know where to go. So I think it's the first point. And after that, I would screen the market. And depending what you're looking for, you might find the answer. Of course, always the alternative is having a great co-founding team, having maybe great angels or first VC, and doing it on your own. It's not a question. It's what most of the startups are doing, and maybe also failing, by the way. And going to an accelerator is, of course, not a guarantee for succeeding. No question about that. But I think you can get what you're looking for if you really look for specific topic. Again, I repeat, going to fintech, going to Switzerland, Silicon Valley, you might find it. Or not, but you really have to screen the market depending on your objective.
So be very specific and do your homework, basically, to be best prepared and understand what you're exactly looking for. I think that's a good key message.
Absolutely. There are currently in Switzerland, let's take this example, maybe between 10, 15 accelerators and quite a lot of incubators. By the way, some co-working space have also a kind of incubator wall, so there is no universal definition. There is an accelerator in Bern for climate, So there you will find some peers. That's cool. If you go to Mass Challenge in Lausanne, you will find 70 startups. So here you go very broad, which is also interesting because you meet a lot of people in a few weeks. If you go to the Kickstart Accelerator, the one here, it's rather Series A, Series B, a bit more later stage. And you will find people here who are in the same situation. they have already raised money, they have a team, they're going to the next level. So you have to look, and F10 as an example is only fintech, Base Lounge in Basel is only biotech, life science, digital health. So you really have to know what you're looking for. And if you know, and if you have this open mind, then you might be successful in such a program.
Sounds great. And also a bit of controversial topic coming from Isimna. She actually initiated the whole thing by just writing us a question about where do I find the best accelerators? I need some guidance there. And then we basically set up this Q&A session based on her input. She asked, is it not just a secure home for entrepreneurs that, don't really go anywhere, but just spend some time drinking coffee and so on? So basically, from the outside perspective, when you look at accelerator startups, sometimes you could get the impression, they are just drinking coffee all day, they are doing meetings, but they are actually not developing their startups and acquiring new customers.
So it's very simple. If they are doing that, they will fail, these guys. And if I would be the chef of one of these incubator or accelerator, I hope to identify it and fire them as soon as possible. There might be some of them, agreed, but don't forget, you will find also these kind of guys outside of accelerators or incubators. And actually right now there is a hype, let's face it. Yeah. There is a fantastic hype around the startup topic. So many new startups every year, so many new VC. So there is an inflation. And as always in such a period of time, there might be huge success, but there will be many people who will fail. And these guys who are unsecured, they will fail also if they don't really work very hard in an accelerator. So, and to be honest, 5 years ago, maybe it was a bit more the case because an accelerator was a kind of new product. Right now, if I look at accelerators and incubators, they are much more professional. They know what they have to do. They have some track records. And also, not only in Switzerland, also Europe or worldwide. And they will get rid of these kind of guys quite quickly, I think, because they know they cannot afford these kind of coffee drinkers.
So that's a good development.
Yeah, I think it's getting professional, the market for sure.
Great.
And also you see that the offering in Switzerland, you see many different kind of accelerators, incubators. Some incubators takes equity, some others won't. So there is a market. This is a market, of course, which is nice. It's part of the ecosystem.
Let's also focus on some Swiss-specific questions. Cedric also asked, which famous Swiss companies have been part of an incubator or accelerator program?
So maybe, I don't know if this is the most famous one. Lobster, who was last year at the Kickstarter Accelerator, has raised this year 20 millions. Typically, post-Series A, pre-Series B, after the Kickstart, they have now raised the 20 millions. Is it thanks to Kickstart or not? I don't know, but I think it's maybe the most famous one. They already have a good valuation, I guess, and I hope they will get bigger. And they are covering a very interesting topic of education technology. There are some others. If you look at the top 100 awards this year, Villot was also at the Kickstart. Apiax was also there. Sonect. So there are some of them, and I think it will come in the next couple of years to see more of them. As of today, we don't have yet a unicorn who's been part of an incubator or accelerator, maybe in the next couple of years.
I think the yet is a very important point there. Hopefully that will change soon.
Absolutely.
Then enough of that. Shin asked, where do I find incubators for young entrepreneurs in Switzerland? Do you have any recommendations, websites or just other resources to look for these programs? Where can you find them?
So one web page with everything on it doesn't exist as of today. In Switzerland, this is, by the way, a topic we're always talking about here at Digital Switzerland with many partners. There is not. No, you will find different pages maybe on Startup Ticker, maybe on startup.ch. On our page, you will find an overview of the 10 accelerators, but not the incubators. You will have to look a bit around. And you will find some pages with some of them. But the one I've mentioned will be a good start.
And maybe in general, is there a good overview from your perspective? Basically, what are the best programs in Switzerland? I know you already mentioned them in different questions, but maybe you can just give us like your top 5, for example, of incubator or accelerator programs.
So as of today, there is no labels or ranking or whatever. In our accelerator program, we have 10 of them. And if you look at incubators also, there are maybe 10, 20 in Switzerland. It's again depending on your topic. There are some small one, but very high quality, like the one about climate in Bern. Is it good? Is it not good? It's not a question. It's focused on a topic. And it's a lot about the people to people at the end of the day. It's a fragmented market yet. It's a not very transparent market yet. I think it will develop in the next couple of years to become more transparent. And the best way I will recommend to you is get in touch with these guys, visit them, look where they are, and look at the market, and you will have to decide yourself. It's also a lot about these human-to-human connections. I still believe with the program owners of incubators or accelerators.
So also do your due diligence to a certain degree. Would you also recommend to talk to other startups that went through that exact same program?
Very good question. It's a no-brainer. It's like getting investors. Do your own due diligence, look to them, ask all the startups if they are great guys. And that's exactly the same with accelerators and incubators. I will do quite a deep due diligence to make sure it's like getting new investors. It's a strong engagement when you go in such a program. You have to make sure you're going to the right one.
Absolutely.
So do a due diligence is a very good way of doing it.
Great. Then Daniel Koss asked, why would I prefer a Swiss incubator over the giants like Y Combinator, for example?
It's if I'm a Swiss company and I want to go international, let's face it, I would rather go for an international incubators or accelerators. I think you have to go for a program which brings you something you don't have today. That's the simple answer. Otherwise, it's maybe not worth the time you will engage. So many Swiss startups, if they are young ones, or if you need access to Swiss corporates, you can stay here. Fantastic. If you want to go to Silicon Valley or Singapore, or go to Scandinavia, or there are so many of them, there are more than 500 or 1,000 in the world, then go abroad. You have to go abroad to such a program. So I think it's really depending if you're looking for something here, but otherwise as a Swiss startups, you really have also to analyze foreign players, definitely.
Before we continue with the show, we would like to let you know that we will be hosting our next Swissprener Live event on November 7th. We'll be having a fireside chat with Sophie Hundertmark, where we'll talk about how to successfully implement chatbots for your business. Of course, there will also be food, drinks, and enough time to network. The event is co-organized with Büro Zürich and takes place on the evening of November 7th in Zurich. Visit our website www.Swissprener.org to learn more and book your free ticket. We hope to meet you there in person. And would you say that there is a Y Combinator equivalent in Switzerland or something that gets close to it?
Good question. I think Kickstart is developing very well. As I said, a bit more later stage. Mass Challenge is also a great program. We have, and then the others are a bit more focused, so smaller, but a very high level, high quality. The F10, Base Lounge, etc. We're not there yet, but again, as I see on the market right now, in the last 2-3 years, it's getting very professional. And also accelerators, as I said, because it's a market, they need revenue streams in order to operate. They will have to get more professional and better over time. And many accelerators are also, and incubators are slowly looking at second-time entrepreneurs. I think it's the next wave, not only going for first-time entrepreneur and young entrepreneurs, but you want the second-time entrepreneurs. Success rate is higher, if not much higher.
Yeah, the stats are pretty clear on that.
And you want to get this guy also in your program. So that's the next wave of accelerators / incubators in the next years. And we will see what will happen.
Is there already one that focuses on second-time entrepreneurs in Switzerland?
I think they are all talking about it.
Okay.
Hopefully it will come soon. I know at Kickstarters, they have maybe the advantage a bit more later stage. Some of the founders are already doing their second or third company, so it's already a kind of second-time entrepreneur.
But it's not per se a focus that you say only second-time or plus entrepreneurs.
Not yet. Or not as I know. Not as I know.
That changes quickly.
Yeah, not yet. It might change quite soon. I think it will be a very interesting development.
You also talked about the business model of such programs. Maybe you can also give us some background, because you said, they need to have some revenue streams, but most of the time, the startups are not the ones that can give you these revenue streams as a program, right? So they probably need some partnerships, sponsors. Can you also walk us a bit through the business model behind such a program?
Absolutely. So for every incubator or accelerators, you don't earn so much money from startups. It's not the objective. You rather spend money for the startups at the end of the day, stipends and everything. You get the money from partner sponsors. So you have to look again at which verticals you would like to cover. So also the big programs, they have some verticals, which one you covers, and you're looking for partners. It's business. It's a partnership business. And big corporates, it might be also cantons, it might be foundations. And to them, you have to offer something. So very often what you do is you bring them together with the startups. So on one side, you have the partners. On the other side, you have the startups. And it might be a win-win situation in the best case, because the big partners, they need innovation. And the small guys who has innovation, they need customers, they need partners. So that's the win-win in many of the accelerator/incubator programs.
But it could also be a huge waste of time if there's not a good fit or you don't have done your homework properly, right?
Correct. But as a startup person, it's always the same. You need to stop when you see it's not for you. I mean, we bring you something on the table, or they bring you something on the table, maybe. They might bring you some corporates visiting you during the acceleration program. As a startup person, you need to be able to say it's not for me, or it's not the kind of corporates we need. And the corporate the same, by the way. So it's a curation, it's a matchmaking process, which might happen in an incubator of a longer phase or in an accelerator of a shorter phase or site. But of course, you need to make sure you're going to the right accelerators. You need to make sure so also part of the due diligence as a startup person would be to look at the corporates in the background. If they're all your customers already, then you might lose your time if you're looking for new corporates. It's very simple. So it's part of the due diligence. If they're only foundations, and you were looking for corporates, then don't be surprised when you start the program. So really look at your clear objectives and how the setup is. Otherwise, you might be disappointed, definitely. I will also look at the coach, and what kind of investors might join in the program. All this kind of stuff, do your own due diligence, definitely. Otherwise, you will be badly surprised.
Then we would also like to focus a bit on the involvement, how you actually work with these programs. So Cedric asked, how much equity will I give up when I join an accelerator? I know this probably also depends on the case, but maybe you have some rough estimations or ranges that you can give to our audience.
Hey, no, Cedric, there is no one answer, unfortunately. It's between 0 and 10, I would say. You have some accelerators, start a bootcamp. They're really taking, if I'm not wrong, 5 or 7.5, and they're giving you something. There are some others, they don't take any equity. Kickstarter, on the one in Switzerland, mainly, they don't take equity. They give you services, they give you access. As a startup, I have the feeling, if you're also a second-time entrepreneurs, I will prefer to go for a zero equity program with strong services. I have the feeling, because of course you're able to raise quicker some money, which you might not need from the programs. Right. On the other side, it might be a nice access in such an incubator or accelerators if you're maybe a first-time entrepreneurs or second-time in a new market. Then it might be a good approach to give some equities. But the answer is between 0 and 10. And here also part of the due diligence, look at what they're offering you. Look really and speak with startups, speak with ex-startups of the program, and ask them, hey, was it worth? Yes or no, and why? It's part of the due diligence.
Then Larson asked, are all programs full-time and how long do they actually take place? So we heard in the first question, there's a difference regarding the timing, like how long they actually take. But first, let's tackle the full-time question. Do all of the programs that you can participate in, do they require you to be there full-time, or how does that work?
Actually, right now, the market is expanding. It's an inflation, as I said. You will find everything pretty much. Look at as a big kind of incubator, because of a long time, over some month, it's a virtual incubator, which is, by the way, a very good one in Switzerland. In the space area, they have some great startups and doing a great job in Europe for the ESA. And this is a virtual incubator, as they call themselves. So you don't have to go at ETH on site and work there 12 hours a day. It's virtual. You will find some other incubators. You should go there. This is also the way you might profit from the incubators, from the coach, etc., from the trainers. Accelerators also very different. Some of them must challenge. You will have to stay pretty much, if they have not changed their model, 3 months on site. Some others, like the Kickstarters, is over 7 to 9 weeks, but you only here in Switzerland 2 or 3 weeks, and the rest you have contact with the coach and trainers and vertical leaders virtually. So pretty much right now everything possible, and it's also part on your due diligence. My feeling is incubator is something different. You really want to go somewhere with a very intensive coaching process, then go for this kind of program. Accelerator is more time to time, having really a boost. It's a boost over a short time, and then you go alone on the next level. And there you find, again, everything. Some programs I know in other countries, they take 3 weeks, and then you're back. Everything possible. It's part of the due diligence.
So find the right fit for you, basically.
Yeah, find the right fit. Also, are you looking for something very intensive? You need coaching, you need trainers, you want to go to workshops. Then choose a program where you might spend some months. Maybe it's the way you will progress. If you're an experienced entrepreneur, you have good track record, you have so much to do, but you look rather for specific stuff, access to some investors, access to some corporates, then a program over 7 weeks with 3 weeks on site might be better for you, depending on your situation.
Now let's imagine that we just went through a program. Successfully, we managed to go through all of the required stages. How do we at the end determine whether the program was a success for our company or not? What would you recommend there?
So the first point is, have you defined your objectives before starting?
Good point.
If not, it's not going to be a success, of course, but then it's maybe not a good way to go. No, it's really about defining your own objectives. And of course, in a later stage, it's a lot about, do you have new customers? Do you have new investors? At the end of the day, it's about the top line first. Always the top line first, and then getting enough liquidity. So if you get good on these ones, depending on your product, and maybe finding new hiring also in the program, which is also interesting. You really need to define your KPIs. This is about your objectives, and then go back on them and look, okay, are we there, close to them, or not at all? But I think it's a lot about the customers and investors and new insights, maybe new hiring, as I said.
I know this is, again, very case specific and heavily depends on your business model, etc. But what would be a sort of a good example of what you can realistically expect from top line revenue or new customers during such a program? Like, is it realistic to get one more customer or hundreds of new customers? Depending on B2B, B2C, I'm fully aware of that. But is there a rough estimation, maybe of a success story that you heard? How many new revenue that the startup closed, or how many new customers that they won in such a program?
Yeah, it's very depending. Well, let's take some examples. If you're a B2B case and you go in such an acceleration program, for example, you meet, let's say, 20 new corporates, which is quite fantastic. 20 meetings with corporates. For me, it's one of the highest added value. 20 meetings within 3 months. Good luck for getting them outside of it. The sales life cycle might be very long until you get there. So it's maybe one of the advantage. From 20 customers, let's look at the funnel. It's no rocket science. You get 3 new customers. And maybe not during the program. it might take a bit longer, but it's already a big success. So you won't get huge, increase. It's also not possible. Let's face it. But if you're good in sales, in marketing, you are prepared. You are B2B case. And you have 20 new meetings. I think it's already a good success, in my opinion. Always always compare it with no program. So how much time, how much effort? It might be less. Huh? I don't want to say it's always good. It might be less, but if you want to get 20 meetings outside of an acceleration incubation program, what is the effort I will have? And compare it.
Closely linked to that is also, the resources, the time, and maybe also the money that you put in there. What are good and fair terms for startups to look out for? As you mentioned, some programs are even like they don't take any equity. Do you not have to pay for them at all? Is it just freely and sponsored? What are good and fair terms for startups?
I think good terms are maybe zero equity, but I don't want to say equity is always bad, but It might be a good way of starting. And then after, I will really look at the number of workshops, the number of meetings, the number of events, meetings with investors, with corporates, this kind of stuff, because it's only about engagement and meeting new peers. You will learn something. If you go in a program and you stay, somewhere on your corner around, and there is no interactions, then you will go back and say, what was that? So look really at the services they will offer you, and not in terms of money. Maybe they might pay you the trip, the hotel, it's fine. But it's not the main reason to go there, to do sightseeing. It's really about the interactions in the domains you're looking for. And then I will go really in the due diligence, as you mentioned, and ask for details and do my own calculation. It's the way you can measure if the benefit is good for you or not.
And to sort of conclude this episode, I would like to bring up another question of Cedric Waldburger. And he asked, why should I not join an accelerator or incubator? I think this will give us a great summary from the important points that you just mentioned the minutes before.
Okay, fantastic. Accelerators, incubators are part of the ecosystem. It's part of the development of, let's take now the Swiss ecosystem, 2,500 startups, about 300 new per year, depending again on the definition, but it's fantastic, about 1 billion investments, equity investment per year. So we have a nice development, top 5 country in Europe. And part of it are incubators, accelerators. I think a reason why you shouldn't go maybe is the first one, you don't have the right mindset to learn. So it's really important, this one, to be curious. If you have the impression you know what you have to do, don't go in such a program. The second one also is your business is skyrocketing like hell. So you're so under pressure, but positively say it. You have the hockey stick somewhere, then you have so much work, you should avoid like also raising maybe too much money, or you should avoid going in such a program. It might be the second reason for that. And the third one is, if you do your really own due diligence, your experience, you know what you're looking for, you do your due diligence, and you don't find the right programs, like looking for investors, you have some killer, showstopper or deal breaker criteria. And if it's the case, then don't go. Then wait, focus on your business, and later on you might find a new program which might fit. There are the 3 reasons you should avoid going for such programs, in my opinion.
I think these are great points, and thank you so much, Nicolas, for taking time and answering the questions of our users. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the best and lots of success with Digital Switzerland.
Thanks again for inviting and looking forward for the next steps. Thanks you, Sylvain.
Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the content, we would be thrilled to receive your rating on Apple Podcasts. With that, you not only support Swissprener, but also help other entrepreneurs finding and discovering the Swissprener Show as a podcast. Thank you so much for your support. Next week, we are traveling to outer space. We will visit Swiss to 12, a Swiss startup company located in Lausanne. They are producing, or actually 3D printing, radio frequency communication components. And they just got their first antennas into space in July this year. They opened a US subsidiary to better serve that market, and they also recently closed an 18 million Swiss francs fundraising round. How they got there and what they actually did along the way, this is all the stuff that we'll talk about in next week's episode, so make sure to tune in again for an all new episode of the Swissprener Show.